that you've had some experience with a professor approaching you. Maybe if you feel comfortable, could you tell us a little bit about that? And
I
how
can.
did
I
you
can.
feel?
I don't remember being more afraid ever. I dropped the class. That's to tell you how scared I
Oh,
was.
wow. Okay. Well, welcome to the HairX Friends Week at this podcast, where we share our thoughts on the pharmacy profession, experiences as healthcare providers, and explore our identities as two women of color going after it all.
As we share our stories, we hope you laugh, maybe cry, and feel inspired as you get to know us. Because at the end of the day, friends, we got this.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, y'all.
If you're new to the pod, my name is Thu.
Hi, everybody. This is Saley.
We're so happy to have you join us today. I believe at this time, we're going to be uploading this episode in August.
Yeah.
And it's been almost a whole year now since we've started on this journey. But it doesn't feel like a year, right? I don't know. It feels like we've just started this like a couple of months ago, because I think we've just really been like putting our heads down and just do everything.
Yes, and learning, because if you're also new here, we just had an idea and was like, let's just do it, even though we had no idea what let's just do it meant. So we've been learning, right? We've been learning a lot. So every little step of our evolution has felt like a new place, right? Like the Instagram growth, that's a new phase that we're getting, consistently growing in that space. And if you're not following us, you're missing out. Go follow us now. It is HairX Friends, WGT.
Yes.
Across all platforms. And we are learning about YouTube and what that universe is like and how we can make some progress there. We are partnering with brands. Y'all, we're partnering with other brands.
Yeah.
Which is a real area that we wanted to put some energy into.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, I think that's why we still just feel like we're new at all of it, even though I think you texted me the other, you're like, I listened to an earlier episode. Oh my gosh. I haven't gone back
yet. Well, I listened to our bonus episode, like the walkout bonus episode, because I'm seeing that there is a lot of people listening to it, like more like I guess our newer listeners are listening to some of those older episodes. And so I'm going back to see, like, are they a good representation of who we are? I think they are. But but you know, if you're stuck with us, or if you're sticking with us since the beginning to now, I think you're seeing our growth as well. Like, I feel like I'm a lot more confident, maybe.
Relaxed,
relaxed. I think that's the better word. Is I'm just kind of like, I just feel more natural at this.
Yeah.
We're going to NAFA and then SNAFA in a couple of weeks, which is so exciting. And I expect for us to be recording an episode in person, which is the first time we're doing that.
It's the first time we're meeting in person.
So editing Thu here to give you guys an update. Unfortunately, Saley and I did not get to meet at NAFA or get to go together. Saley had to take some time off to be with her family, and so I went by myself. But I still had so much fun. I got to meet so many incredible people that I've just met through emails, and I get to see them in real life. It's just so cool. Saley and I will be planning on opportunities to record and meet in person, and so stay tuned. We'll make it happen. All right, back to regular programming. Yeah. Wait, hold on. Can I ask you a question? This might be a very superficial question, but I'm 5 feet tall. Did you know I'm that short? How tall are you? Are you really tall? Because that'll be so awkward in pictures. Wait, how tall are you? No, this is an important question.
No, you're not. Because, okay, wait.
Are you also 5 feet tall?
No, but I was saying, I was like, can we make predictions on the show about what we believe our heights are? And then reveal when we meet. You ruined it. But I would have, like, do you see my face? I think it's maybe your personality.
You think I'm a lot bigger?
You're so much taller.
I'm a very
I
short
don't believe that.
person.
I don't believe you're 5 foot tall. I thought you were like 5'6" at least. Like you're
Wow,
taller than me.
I love it. That's the energy I exude. I exude
It's
tall
your
people energy.
energy.
Right? And I just
Yeah.
had my birthday. Oh, by the way, I just had
I
my
know.
birthday last Saturday,
Yeah.
and we're recording in July. And I didn't realize that on Saturday there was a whole situation going on with Donald Trump and the attempted assassination.
Oh,
That was on the
yes.
same day. So I don't know when you found out about it, but I found out the next day because, like,
Me
on
too.
July 13th, I was like, da, 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 doing my self care, my birthday care, do my makeup, getting my fit on. And then the next day, I was like, what the F? Literally, like, can you imagine? I was texting my sister about this because I'm like, can you imagine what happened if like something crazy happened, World War III happens, or like Civil War happens, and I'm literally just like eating dinner and not like oblivious to the world.
It's the soundtrack to the dancing that sends me straight to hell. It's like on July 13th, I'm like, the sky, you can fall if you want. It's my birthday.
Yeah. Even if it wasn't my birthday, because I'm just not on the news. I avoid the
Yeah,
news.
I avoid the news. I think that's
That's
where
so
I am
wild.
too. I avoid the news.
Yeah.
So there
Everybody's
was
just
a
kind of
whole
like checked out.
Microsoft.
This is just too much, I feel
It's a
like. Yeah.
lot.
It's very overwhelming. Yeah.
It's a lot. Microsoft has a complete global collapse yesterday, right?
Yeah.
And I'm just going like I was teaching yesterday. Like my day yesterday was nuts. I got in from Tech Week at 11 p.m. on Thursday. I had to go pick up my son from his grandmother. We get home. He's not down till about 11:30. I have to wake up by 4 a.m. because I need to hit the road by 5 to drive two and a half
Oh my
hours to
gosh.
teach. I get there 20 minutes before class starts, figure out the technology, teach for 6 hours, then get in the car. On my way back, I'm checking in with like my husband. He's like, "Oh, you're done?" I was like, "Yeah, it was just 6 hours. I didn't teach the whole class." "Oh yeah, man. It's crazy. Technology, right?" I'm like, "What do you mean?"
I don't know what's going on. Yeah.
He's like, "What? You couldn't be that disconnected." I was like, "Well, I have no notifications on my phone. That's intentional. Zero
Yeah.
notifications. Like besides my text message and calls, no notifications." And he's like, um, "Yeah, check out the news. Call me back." And I think he was just like, there was a lot, but he said all flights and stuff,
Yeah. All the
and he's
flights
into
were,
that. So
I don't,
I
yeah.
I was delayed with that, but that was scary to know
Yeah.
that that whole thing happened yesterday, and I'm just like, I'm gonna teach drug interactions.
Sometimes it's just safer and more comfortable being in your bubble because there's just too much, and
Lies.
I feel really overwhelmed. Yeah. So
No.
if anyone else is listening out there who also is kind of in the same like overwhelming feeling, or just there's too many things going on in life,
Yeah.
maybe we can just take a lot of that worries away from you for a moment,
For a
and
moment.
for like an hour or so, and just make you laugh and make you
Yeah.
cry and whatever it is that we do today,
Or shock
and
you to
shock
learn
you.
that Thu
What are
is
we?
5 foot tall.
Hey,
Like, I'm not
we're
getting
going
over that anytime
we're going back
soon.
to, but this is why I bring it up because I think part of me is like, I don't know if I'm insecure about my height. I don't think so, but it is something that
No.
I think about. I'm like, how tall are these people? What am I going to look like next to them? Are they going to be giants
Oh,
next to me? Do I need to wear heels or no?
today's episode is a real random find, but
I love it.
um so I wanted and I think when my direction and thinking about talking about this story, when I was thinking about it, we had initially discussed, I was like, I think I wanted to make it part of our pharmacy true crime. But then the more I read and learned about this story, something else emerged for me. And it really just became a story about domestic violence.
Oh,
Yeah,
much darker. Yeah.
much darker. Much darker. All
Yeah.
right. Domestic violence, power dynamic between learner and teachers, like power dynamic in the education system. I always, so like one of the things, like when I'm talking to my mentees, I make sure that they understand like what a power dynamic actually is, how to recognize when you feel like someone may actually be abusing that authority in their power, and how do you effectively advocate for yourself if you find yourself in a position where you think that you could be very well facing a situation where, hey, I think this person is fully aware that they have a lot of power over me and they have no problem flexing that muscle to put me in my place or coerce me or force me to do something that I don't want, right? That's what we're talking about
Oh my
today.
gosh. Okay. I did.
You should have worn red lipstick today.
I was gonna. Hey,
Just to be,
you should have warned me. I was
I
not
should have
prepared for
worn
this. I
it. I should
thought
have
we
been
were
like,
getting
should be like, Thu, it's a red lipstick kind
red
of
lipstick day.
day. And so what we're diving into today, it's an important but very sensitive topic, because I don't know what it's viewed like in the Asian community, to the best of your understanding, through what domestic violence and power dynamics, what's some of those things, like what's viewed as that's just the way it is versus absolutely not.
Yeah.
You need to speak up about it.
And I think sometimes, I don't know, sometimes I'll speak up about something or I'll just be like, that doesn't sound right. And then
Yeah.
I feel like I always get told that, like, maybe you're being too sensitive. And I have a
Sensitive.
very specific example right now in my
Yeah.
head.
Yeah.
But before we jump all into that,
Oh,
haha, you think we're gonna skip this part? You think we're gonna skip this part? Because we need to do this part.
I just
If
never.
you are watching on YouTube, please, please, please subscribe and write in the comments and engage with us, because that's how YouTube's going to push our video out. And if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcast, we would love it if you can write a review and share. That's the most important thing, is to share. If you
Yeah.
feel like we are bringing value to you, if you enjoy our conversations, please invite your friends to join with us, and just
Yeah.
make it into a big old group, big
Yes.
old giant community, because that's the goal here, is to get as many people to join what we're doing here as possible. So
Absolutely. Everything she just said, plus so much more.
thank you so much,
All of
guys.
it. Thank you guys. We appreciate it.
So let me tell you my story, and I would love to get your feedback. One time I was just hanging out with two other girls. They're pharmacists as well, and they're also Asians. So we've worked in healthcare for a long time, and we're kind of on this trip together. So it's just like a fun, chill trip. And one of the girls brought up this story. I can't remember. Oh, she was working in a pharmacy, and she got a call from an assistant that was trying to refill a prescription for Viagra for her boss. And so she's the pharmacist and she's talking to an assistant who's trying to put in this refill. And I remember thinking, and I also said this out loud, I was like, well, that seems really inappropriate for a boss to have his assistant fill like Viagra for him, or like call in to refill that prescription. Like, I just feel like that's so personal. And like, and like, on one hand, I understand that maybe it doesn't have to be like a personal thing. She is his assistant and she may have to deal with a lot more personal things in his life. But I feel like it just is weird to me. Like, if I was somebody's assistant and they're like, hey, I need my Viagra filled, could you help me with that? I would feel very odd. And so maybe this is where you can really show some light in this and make me feel more validated for being like, that's weird. And they're like, maybe you're being too sensitive. And I was like,
No.
I don't think, So anyways,
I don't think that you're being sensitive is my response to that. I think that I'm on the same wavelength with you in my assessment of that. I think that there are still certain boundaries. Like, that's just crossing a boundary, in my opinion. But again, right? Like, putting myself in that assistant's shoes, her boss has asked her to do something, and she probably may not even feel like this is a safe work environment where she can say, I don't know, I'm uncomfortable doing that, and feel like there won't be any retaliation associated with that. I think, like, for you and myself, I'd probably pause and stand there and look at you in silence for a second to bring to your attention that, like, you're venturing into an area that I am very uncomfortable with, right?
Yeah.
But I don't think that you're being too sensitive would be my response to that. I think that there should still be some things that you want to hold close to the vest for maintaining professional relationships, especially if it's people who are working under you. So
Yeah.
the example that you're talking about, it's an excellent segue into like what today's
Yeah,
episode is
let's do
going to
it.
kind of try to highlight a little bit. Um, Before I got into um, Miss Jacqueline Robinson's story, I want to talk about what power dynamic is, first of all, because every time, my biggest, or I have a question first, actually. What was the first time that you became aware of the term power dynamic?
Mm.
Is there a distinct time
Probably
that you
the
can
Me Too
recall?
movement,
Me Too movement. Okay. The first
which was
time I
what which was like 2018, maybe
18, yeah, maybe
something like
like
that. Yeah.
if we were to say years ago, it definitely hasn't been 10 years
Well,
ago.
I mean, like power dynamics been talked about for many many years, but the
Yes.
terminology has never been like it's never been honed in that. Like the Bill Clinton
Thank
and
you.
Monica Lewinsky situation, we
Thank
all hear this
you.
story, right? But like
Thank
we
you.
never really had the definition or the word to explain why it's so wrong and
Yes.
weird, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, because you're like, well, it's consensual sex, so
Yes.
like, why is this a problem? But it's beyond that, and so like
Yes.
you can kind of understand why it feels weird, but you can't
Yeah.
like say
Pinpoint it.
why.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I think like my first time hearing the word power dynamic was just that, the Clinton and Lewinsky scandal. And at that point, I was nowhere in my life where I cared to understand what that is. Right? Like I was a high schooler. I think I was a high schooler. Y'all are gonna age me out. I don't care. But
go do the
but
math, everybody. Go do the
don't
math.
do not do the math. I'm just gonna say high school. I'm not gonna tell you where in high school I was. But at that point, I felt safe in my high school. I'd never heard of teachers engaging with students. That would be something I find out was a phenomenon that happened after, like once I got in college, I saw it a lot more happen there. I was approached by a professor when I was in college and stuff like that, but I never really understood it. And to your point, the Me Too movement, people talk negatively about it. People have their politics about the Me Too movement. But one of the things that I greatly appreciated as a young woman in a professional world about Me Too was that it educated me about what I needed to be aware of as I moved around my professional career with what was okay, what were just a result of you're being too uptight or things that were just
Yeah.
straight up red flags, like absolutely not. I'm telling someone, and I'm going to continue to tell someone till I can find someone who's going to do something about it.
Mm,
That's what Me Too kind of, I think, did for me in educating me.
yeah.
So I wanted to explain or define what power dynamics means in an educational setting. It's defined as the dynamic refers to the way power is distributed and the effect that distribution has on the interactions between teachers and learners. Basically, in layman's terms, your teacher is uniquely positioned to determine not just your progression, but how well you progress. They can give you questions to the exam depending on what they're getting in return. They can tell you, they can grade your paper differently because of a barrier that has been crossed between the two of you. They can allow you to miss class without no fuss in comparison to other students with whom they haven't necessarily crossed those
Mm.
barriers with. This is the biggest problem that we have when it comes directly with power dynamics between learners and teachers.
That's so wild. I never even thought about those special treatments.
Special treatments, yeah.
Yeah.
And like I think in elementary school, a lot of people, it's just oh, you're just the teacher's pet. Like the student that brings the teacher an apple, and then the teacher is just extra, extra sweet to that one student and stuff like that. But as we become to grow, as we become young adults and we go to college and other things happen, it becomes really, really important that we are clearly setting boundaries in the way we interact with our professors. And the professors also have a moral, ethical, and professional responsibility to make sure that these things are professional.
Wow. Okay. So what's the story? Because it
Can we
seems like you're kind of alluding to a lot of it already.
Yeah. Can we pause a second?
Yeah.
And so to help everyone kind of understand how important this topic is, I want to tell you a story of a woman. Her name is Jacqueline Camille Robinson. She was a former medical student, and the tragic story involving her and her professor, Dr. Henry Lloyd Garvey. Dr. Henry Lloyd Garvey had been a professor of pharmacology at the College of Medicine at Howard University for years. And
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
A
And
pharmacology professor.
a pharmacology professor who was married, 11 years married. And his role at the College of Pharmacy, everyone respected him. His expertise was very well established and known. His commitment to the school, to furthering the school's mission and helping educate minority students, very well documented in all the years that he worked at the school. You have a question?
No, I was just thinking, like, of course he's well respected and is like loved by many and does all these nice things, blah, blah, blah. But then is also like a psychopath.
However,
Dot.
However, there was also this other side to Dr. Garvey that was some form and somewhat of an open secret on campus. And it was one where he'd been kind of allegedly having personal, less than professional relationships with his medical students. Some of these students were students, well, if you think about the class he taught, he teaches pharmacology, right? So every student that matriculates through the medical college has to take pharmacology. It's a required course. And so he had a lot of access in the sense of he taught a lot of students. His course wasn't this elective where maybe only 5% of the students that were enrolled in his course ever took his course. But his course was a cornerstone and a mandatory course that all medical students would take. And so he had a lot of influence and knew a lot of people that were his former students that had graduated. And that put him in an exceptionally powerful position in the form of a robust network, years of a professional career that was very well established.
Wait, can you tell me how old this is? Like the timeline? Is this in the
1980s.
In the 80s, okay.
In the 80s. Okay. So we are pre-social media. There's no one
We've been free social media like in the last 20 years, I think.
Yeah,
right? This is a like new revelation.
Like, there's no like anonymous Twitter account that would have gone on a crusade to expose the professor. That doesn't exist at all at this point in time. People are just aware that there are some eyebrow-raising interactions and activities with students that some people found were a little iffy. And some of his engagements and relationships with some of his students were actually like not very secret type of secret.
What? Okay.
I know. So it's like
I'm disturbed already.
I know.
I'm scared.
There's this version of him as the esteemed professor, husband, family man, and there's this other version of him where he's a serial monogamist with his students.
Serial monogamist?
I know.
Like relationships?
But with many of them. That's a nutshell.
No, I don't think monogamous is the right term then. It's
serial?
Polyamorous?
Oh, no. Well, now we've evolved to say polyamorous, but back in the 80s, they called it serial monogamous.
Oh, okay.
He had each of them believe they were the only one, but they were not.
Oh my God. Okay. Okay. All
Right?
right.
So
Let's do this. I'm ready.
serial monogamous, air quotation.
Wow.
One of those students was Jacqueline Camille Robinson. In 1985, she's charged with second-degree murder of Dr. Garvey, her professor and lover, and after he was shot in her apartment,
No. Oh my God.
And like, you're a true crime fan, so you'll kind of appreciate the significance of this. Dr. Garvey is shot in the groin by her. I know.
But that wouldn't kill him though.
You are terrible. Dr. Garvey is shot in the groin by her. But the background story of this is about a week or two before this incident happens, the police is called to Jacqueline's apartment where her neighbors are hearing loud screams and loud crying. And they are concerned that there could be some domestic violence happening. And police responds to several of these instances where when they get there, she's the only person in the apartment. She is disheveled. She is crying and screaming. And when they ask her what's wrong, she says that she's having issues with her boyfriend. But at that point, the boyfriend is never present when the police comes in. And so it's unclear if Miss Robinson is having behavioral health challenges or if it's just that by the time the police comes, boyfriend is in fact gone, right? And Miss Robinson derails even further where she calls Mrs. Garvey, her professor's wife, at work to tell her that she needs to leave her husband because she's not going to give him up. And I quote,
Oh my God.
it gets very, very messy.
Okay.
Right? She calls the job several times. One of those instances, that's what her demand is. The other instance, I actually just want to read what she actually says, because it's just like she calls and asks me on the weekend that if I'm going to New York with him. And I said, yes, I'm going to New York with him. And she says to me that if I go to New York with him this weekend, I will be sorry. So
there's just a lot of evidence of like threatening behavior. She's threatening everybody.
She's threatening the wife, and the neighbors just consistently kept reporting that she was like unhinged.
Wow. Yeah.
Crying and all these different things.
Right.
And so
it's just so sad to see somebody like that who's obviously exhibiting a lot of unusual behaviors and nobody's helping her.
And nobody's
I mean, back in the 80s, like mental health is probably not even a priority to anybody. So
to anyone,
not a red flag, nothing.
If the police shows up, police doesn't see a boyfriend at that time, they are not even interested in even saying you're exhibiting signs and symptoms of a person in distress. Whether there's a boyfriend involved or not, we should get this woman some help. No.
Yeah.
They just leave. They get called. They come back. And I think like in the appellate document, the court documents, the neighbors' testimonies are that they made calls like this in the weeks leading up to this incident about 3 or 4 times. About 3 or 4 times, where she is very, 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 very emotional when they get there. Dr. Garvey doesn't die from his wounds immediately. He
That's
lingers.
What I thought.
He lingers in a coma for several months before he passes away. Yeah, the incident is in September, and he unfortunately doesn't passes away. He unfortunately passes away in September of 1985. And Jacqueline is arrested. Jacqueline is convicted of assault charges because remember, initially he doesn't die, 5 months, right? but she's definitely apprehended. She goes to court. She is charged with assault because he's lingering in a coma yet. And she's convicted of that. But then they set bond at $500,000 and she's able to make that. Like she comes from a family.
Gosh.
Yeah. She comes from a family that is able to get her bond at $500,000. And that's when this story kind of fell in my lap.
Wow.
Jacqueline vanishes. She skips bail.
No! I didn't expect that. Just turn yourself in. Like, where are you going?
Where am I going with this? Jacqueline vanishes. She jumps bail. She makes bail and jumps bail. And for you guys, for the next 16 years, she is a fugitive. 16 years.
16 years?
16 years.
Damn, she's better than a lot of these criminals out there.
A lot of these criminals.
My God.
She was in med school. She's smart.
I don't know. Well, remember the last Pharmacy and True Crime?
Yeah.
The guy that was not so smart?
Oh,
pharmacist,
right.
doctor. Yeah. So
it means nothing.
She is like cunning. She's like disguise and stuff or something.
Yes.
Anyways, okay. I just want you to tell me what happens.
You have all the details.
Yeah.
She eludes justice by moving from countries like England, Holland, the Bahamas, and she's finally caught in Canada in 2001.
Wow. Oh, wow.
2001. Yeah. So I wanted to talk about this case because I don't know of a power dynamic one that's gone this far, because the power dynamic case, like if I was gonna do something, it would have been something like ripped from the headline, Harvey Weinstein or something else like that. These are all popular and very common examples, right? But I think the reason why I wanted to do this, it's because it took place on a college campus. It started on a college campus between a professor and their student. And when power dynamic is left unchecked, it can lead to devastating consequences. And the more I looked into this case and the more I looked into the statistics and the numbers around how much of a problem this is, 38% of college age women admit to being approached, right?
Okay, being approached is a lot better than like to actually doing something.
Oh, well.
Oh, no.
Then it gets worse for you.
Okay. Oh, no.
The 38% of those.
I understand why you wanted the red lipstick on today because, yeah.
Because
no.
What we're getting into now, I needed red lipstick too for this.
Oh my gosh. But can you, not to like just seek out details, but do you know how this Mr. Dr. Garvey guy, like what was some of his MO, so to speak? Like how does he, like, does he typically will seek out somebody in the classroom
or does
and
it
then
happen?
will reach out to them, you know,
Yeah,
like, did they say anything about any of that? Okay.
No, I
No
couldn't
details.
find.
Okay.
Yeah, no details about.
I'm just curious if
you wanted to know. You want to know what his predatory patterns were.
I very much do. I just want to learn the patterns. I'm also just kind of curious, and I don't know if you're going to go into that later, but like how the school, you know, protected him, because you said that it's an open secret. So like people are fully aware, and yet they waited until this very moment to be like, whoopsies, you know?
Yes.
Okay.
Consent, right?
Yeah. Okay.
And so
I'll let you continue.
Yeah. So college campuses will most of them. I personally couldn't figure out if there were any that didn't have policies around this. They have very clear policies about relationships on campus, not just between professor and students, but professor and professor, like interdepartmental dating. So, for example, one of the most common examples that like my research kept talking about is if we are both in the Department of Biology and I'm department chair and you're like assistant or dean of something else, they would move you to a different department. First of all, we have to disclose that we are in a relationship. The school
Okay.
is not going to allow that you carry on a secretive relationship. Once we decide that we are definitely a thing, we have to disclose to the university that we are in a relationship. And there's a whole interview process of how long has this been going on? Because universities that have really good policies around power dynamics, they will actually investigate any decisions that have been made since the two of you became a couple to understand if perhaps the existence of that relationship may have influenced any departmental policies and or decisions that have been made since
Yeah, see, I
you
didn't even
guys.
think about that.
Yeah.
But like,
It was like, huh? Yeah.
but also like, but they love each other.
Oh gosh. Oh, give me a break. Like, love is so cute, right?
Yeah, I love
But
love.
yeah, love is so cute. But some universities have really clear policies, like they will go and take a look because did you only vote the way you voted because you didn't want to upset your significant other? Or did you vote the way you only voted because you and your significant other talk about work when you're not here and you talk about strategic alignment on different departmental things?
Okay.
So they do investigate to make sure that you're voting because your expertise and your professionalism is guiding your decisions. With students, it becomes a little bit more complicated. If that student is in your classroom, some universities have a zero tolerance for it. It's absolutely not. We cannot find out about it because it's a liability issue for the university. At any point in time, that student can come out and claim sexual harassment and sue not just that professor, but also sue the school. And they will be fully within their rights to do that. Because one of the things that universities have a responsibility of is creating safe learning environment for all of their learners. And there's apparently a case for that. And so having a student that is in your class, dating them is an absolute no, you cannot do that. If the student is in the engineering department and you teach at the College of Pharmacy, you guys are involved in a consensual relationship, you can see how that student would have a lot more of a difficult time claiming coercion, or that there's any type of power dynamic over an assistant professor at the College of Pharmacy that has zero power or say about what's going on in the engineering department to have a relationship with them. But it's still looked down upon. It's still looked down upon. Like, you are an adult that comes to work here. Your adult life should be something that is happening away from here. Like, that was one of the like passive descriptions of how some universities will kind of see their way around this. But to your point, how do we recognize power imbalance, right? Recognizing power imbalance is understanding that teachers and professors inherently, like, they just inherently hold more power in the relationship due to their position and influence. And I think more than just the position, it's that influence that they have. I teach once in a while at all of these different colleges of pharmacy. And when I'm working with a student, or that student is working on a project with a different professor, what that professor has to say about that student carries a lot of weight, even if that student isn't asking that person for recommendation or that person is asking for recommendation. As a professor, you have a way of inserting yourself into an application process that you weren't even invited to. You can find somebody that serves on that committee and influence that person. And that the person that you're influencing has no clue that you're doing that because you're carrying on in a sexual relationship inappropriately with the student, right?
Okay.
And I think that it creates unfair advantage, not to just mention I think as a learner, if you experience something like that, you may go on in your professional career thinking that that is a tactic that you can leverage. If something doesn't happen to teach you that you are being exploited.
What do you mean by that? How are they
Well,
being exploited?
this
If
person is
like
only,
if the student is like, oh, I'm gonna use this to my advantage. I'm gonna leverage this. How are they being exploited?
I think you're being sexually exploited.
Oh,
That's,
like if you're aware of it though.
oh God, that's a whole nother topic, right? Because then at that
Yeah.
point, we are in a quid pro quo.
Yeah, what is that?
That's
I
sexual
hear that term
harassment.
all the time.
That's literally the legal
Oh my
definition for
God, I think I
sexual
learned
harassment.
this from the Trump the Trump
Trial.
trial, the quid pro quo, but like I forgot what that
What that
means.
mean? Because if you go into the agreement or you go into the situation and you know this person wants absolutely nothing from me than what I'm providing them physically, and
Yeah.
I want nothing from them except for them to advance my career,
Yeah.
there's an understanding. But
Right.
is that consensual? Like,
Yeah,
you
because they're both consenting to the situation. They're
it's
both
like
adults.
it sounds like consented to me.
But
It's just,
one cannot, I feel like one cannot maybe sue the other or
but they
blackmail the
can.
other or whatever.
They can.
What a
And I
messy
think,
situation.
isn't it? So
Mm-hmm.
that's the reason why this is not black and white. If that, so let's say we have an understanding, I get what I want, you get what you want. One person gets bored and they decide, I'm done. I've had enough. I want to move on. Right? Because that is the part that the university is always thinking about. When it's good, fine. We don't hear any noise. We don't hear
Okay.
anything, but they are preparing themselves for the likelihood that when this turns sour, are we at
Okay.
risk? Are we exposed? And
You're
they
right.
absolutely
I
are.
forget the whole shooting other people in the groin situation. Yeah, yeah. I forget
People
that the
in the
break
right.
can be a very like a very dramatic one, like a very toxic one. Yeah,
Toxic
okay.
one, right?
I forget about that. Because
Yes.
I'm just thinking about like all the benefits that the two are getting
The
from
two,
each
right?
other.
It just,
Yeah.
if they kept it, if they kept it just straight up, I get what I
Seriously.
want, you get what you want, and they moved on, sure. But as long as they're carrying and engaging and exchanging in that manner on university grounds, that university is liable. They know that they are at risk. They know that if they don't do something to break that up and make sure that it is amicable, where the student just says, oh, bummer, okay, fine, moves on, and the professor understands you can't do this anymore, or, well, in most cases, as I learned, you are just fired, right?
Mm.
And brings us back to your question about how come that didn't happen in this case for this person at Howard, right?
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you, except for the fact that people see things, they turn a blind eye to it until something happens where all of a sudden everyone knows.
Well,
Everyone,
I mean, it sounds like maybe they have the same mindset or maybe thought process as me, where they're like, well, I mean, yeah, it's inappropriate, but like if they're both consenting adults, then like
yeah,
it's probably fine. And then it
it's
turns
probably fine.
out sometimes you have to learn these lessons the hard way, like, oh, it's not fine,
It's not
And
fine.
I think that's why, like in the 80s, these types of things weren't as big of a deal until you continuously see the
See,
repercussions of these relationships breaking up and
yeah,
you're like, oh no, we have to like do something to prevent these really negative
yes,
situations. And
negative
that, I
situation.
mean, you're exploit in a way, like, yeah, I can imagine a student experiencing this type of relationship coming out and being like, this is what happened and it's not fair to everybody else, and exposing the school,
Yes,
exposing the teacher.
exactly.
And then it's like, okay, we need to put
We
a
need a
kibosh on
system.
that. Yeah, we have put a system to. But you said that you've had some experience with the professor, I guess, approaching you. Did
Yes,
you feel like what? Maybe if you feel comfortable, could you tell us a little bit about that and
I
like how
can.
did
I
you
can.
feel in that whole
Oh my God.
situation?
I I don't remember being more afraid ever. I dropped the class. That's to tell you how scared I
Oh
was.
wow, okay.
Um, it was So, okay. And also like keep in mind of how young I also am. I am in my final year of high school, but I've completed over like 90% of my credits. So I'm trying to get a head start on college. So I'm born in September. So I graduate in May after turning 18 the previous September. So I'm an 18-year-old high school senior.
Okay, okay.
And I think in his mind, that's what he asked me. It was like, you're going to this high school. I was like, yes, I'm here to get a head start because I want to go to pharmacy school and I'm trying to get my credits early so I can get earlier further along and stuff.
Okay.
And the school pays for the credit and all that. There was a lot of incentive. So I wanted to take advantage of it. And as a student in the class, at first, I just felt like I was being protected. I'm an 18-year-old that's still in high school on a college campus who's taking calculus-based physics because I've taken AP physics in high school, passed the
Right.
score
You
or
were telling me
whatever.
about this. Yeah.
I'm in a really challenging class and I'm facing my first college course and it's calculus-based physics where I'm like, oh my God, this is hard.
Yeah.
I
Why
didn't
would a
think,
pharmacist need that though?
why would a pharmacist need that? And also, I didn't think this through, right? But I'm like, I've committed, the school's paying for it. I'm going to try to do well in this class. So at first, my interpretation of the extra attention is that he recognizes that I'm a little insecure and not very confident about my ability to pull through the course. That is why I'm being offered extra time after class.
Oh
And that
my
is,
God.
I know. It sounds so sleazy,
No,
right?
but here's the thing. Like, I feel like you feel kind of embarrassed about that, but
I
you have
do.
nothing to be embarrassed
I
about.
am very embarrassed that
But
that
that's
happened.
the shocking part. Like, you didn't do anything wrong. I'm just like really disturbed that this person seems to be giving you extra attention right
Yeah,
off the bat.
I
That is
know.
so freaking creepy.
Yeah. Today, it's creepy. It's like, okay, thank you so much. Like, what the heck? I don't even know you. But then it was like, oh my God, my professor is so awesome. Like, they have all this military experience and they're like teaching now. And they're teaching me so much about what life could be like after high school. It it was shaping up in my head as a mentorship opportunity for me. And by the time I realized what was happening, but yeah, so it starts with you can come after class, I'll give you some example problems and we can work on it on the board and I'll show you how it works and stuff. I was like, oh yes. I was like, I learned by interrogation. I'm so naive, but I'm thinking like I learned by interrogation. So practice questions will definitely help me, blah, blah, blah. And so one day we're like in his office and I'm there to get the practice questions and the packet he gives me is the exam.
Oh,
And I was like, do you just want me to look at this while I'm here and give it back to you? He's like,
he gave you the exam?
yeah, he gave me the exam ahead of time. And I'm looking at the exam questions and I think he could see that I know what this was.
Wait, that's so creepy.
I was like,
That's so scary though for
no,
like a
but
young girl to be in
I
a
know
classroom like an empty classroom with another professor who's I don't know how old was he? Like what do you think? Maybe in his
40s at
40s?
least.
That is
40s at least.
so
Creepy.
creepy.
I know. 40s
Oh,
at
that's
least.
so scary. But
Yeah.
you said it, you kind of like finally realized that something iffy was going on. No?
No, I still don't know that I understand what's going on because you know what I say to him? I was like, this is cheating. That's where my
Yeah,
mind went.
like he didn't yeah.
My
Yeah.
mind didn't go that I think the favoritism I'm experiencing, like this guy wants something in return. My mind is still not connecting those dots.
Right.
I'm still just thinking like, okay, you like me, you want me to do well. That's awesome, but this is cheating. This is an unfair advantage. So I told him, I was like, this feels like cheating. And he's like, oh, no, it's not. I'm going to switch the questions around. But if you know how to do these, you're going to do well on a test. I was like, it's just because you said that this is the test. That's why I'm kind of like, it's cheating. I was like, but if it's an example
Right.
or a version of what the test is going to look like, I was like, okay, then cool. Like, I'm happy to take it and practice with it. I take that packet home. I work on it like hard all night. The exam is the next day. I'm literally reliving the last 12 hours of my life. There's not a single question on there that's different.
Wow. So it was the exam.
It was the exam. I'm taking the test and I'm just like, I'm going to get 100 plus the 7 bonus points that are at the end of this packet. Like, this is what I just worked on for the last 8 hours.
How did you feel? Were you like, were you still like thinking, oh no, I'm cheating? Or
I'm cheating 150%.
But are you suspicious of this man at all now?
I
am. He's lying to you?
I am now, because the first thing now I did was ask one of my cousins.
Okay.
I told my cousin like what was going on. And she told me, she's like, okay, well, starting today.
She's an older
Yes.
Cousin? Okay.
Yeah. She's like, okay, well, step 1, starting today, no more of that staying after class. I don't care what excuse you use. I don't care. You got a job at the ice cream parlor, whatever it is. You're not staying after class anymore. And if you are uncomfortable with telling him that, I'm happy to come to class with you tomorrow and tell him you're not staying anymore. But you need to, I remember her words, she was like, you need to dead that. You need to dead that right now. She's like, no more staying after class. And I was like, okay. The next day, as everybody's packing to leave, I'm packing to leave too. And he's like, oh, you're not staying after class today? I was like, no, I got a part-time job.
So you were doing that like pretty much every day?
Every day. Class was 3 days a week.
Oh, wow. Okay.
You're not staying? I was like, no, I'm not staying. I got a part-time job. He's like, a part-time job for where you're headed? You're thinking too narrow. Like, you need to focus on your education. A $6.25 an hour job, what is that going to do for you? I had such bigger expectations of you. I thought you were different. I thought you were smarter. I thought that you had
the manipulation.
Yes. I thought you had a bigger and better vision about what you wanted to do. And I actually wanted to help you. But if you're going to leave for a $6.25 a job, an hour job, I'm not interested in investing in you. I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed in you. I'm disappointed in you. I know.
Go kick rocks. Who cares?
You love that.
Wow.
I left, but of course I cried because it was like,
it was harsh.
It was like very bad. And like, he was really, really belittling and making me feel like, and I think like the reason why I cried and why like I'm still like trying to not to cry about it, it's because I was telling a lie because I was like scared of you. And like you revealed like what I was scared of, that I'm on track for that. Immediately the next day I go to my guidance counselor. I want to know what I need to do to drop this class.
Oh my gosh.
You can't drop it.
That is so okay. Yeah. Keep going. Oh.
Yes, she's like,
I'm scared.
You can't drop the class. You can't drop the class because the school has already paid for it. Okay. I was like, oh, okay.
Shit.
So I go, and I think the next class, I said like, hi, professor, whatever. And he didn't respond. And in class, when I would raise my hand to ask a question, he made this comment in class, and he was like, you should know that at this point in the semester, this is why I'm completely against these high schoolers coming and taking college courses.
What a fuck.
Came out of your mouth. Yeah, this is why it's such a bad idea, because why haven't you caught on to that?
Oh my God.
So I stayed after class because I was like, have I offended you somehow?
You still stayed after class to ask him that question?
I did, because like I was scared. The school says I can't drop the class and I can't continue to take this treatment for the entire semester. So I'm trying to figure out, how do I like mend this situation so that I can still pass this class? And he was like, You did. You definitely offended me. I made arrangements to stay after class last week and you completely left. And it's like my time is extremely
Oh
valuable. The only way you make it up to me is if you let me take you to dinner.
my
I was like, oh, okay.
Oh
I
my God. This
it's
is so I have a question though during these after school sessions that you guys would have. Did he start like sharing like personal details or anything that gives
yeah.
you an
So
idea?
he showed me pictures of like his big house. So there were a lot of displays of like how well he was doing in life, right?
So creepy.
Yeah, it
I
was
mean,
just
it
like
almost
he
seems
wanted
like
me
he's
to
kind of
know.
like grooming you in a way,
He
you know?
was. He was. I didn't know that that's what grooming was, but
Right.
that's what it was
That's like another terminology that's used a lot more frequently and
frequently now.
explain what that is. But
Yeah,
wow.
I know.
Ooh, this is
After he said
scary.
dinner, I don't know where the courage came from because I also came out of my shell in that moment. And I told him, and I'm like, I am heartbroken that you see me as a weak individual that you could have exploited. I'm like, I cannot be exploited. I will pay the school back if I have to pay them back, but you will never see me again.
Wow. Oh my
And
God.
I just grabbed
Good
my
for
bag and
you.
left. I didn't report it. I didn't
Wow.
talk about it. I don't think I've talked about it ever. My older cousin, every time she saw me after that, she's like, are you still staying after class? I was like, no, I dropped the class. And that is the only conversation that I have ever had about that encounter. But that's when like
I feel like
I
that's like
started,
textbook manipulation
yeah,
and grooming of a mind. I mean, you weren't a minor, but like grooming of a much,
younger
younger
person.
individual.
Yeah. But that's why like when I read this story, I was like, I really think Thu and I should talk a little bit about like power dynamics, but I have like a story to use as an example. I could have used my story, but like you can tell that I'm still like a little I still carry a lot of shame about that because
Oh my
I
gosh.
I know
That
because
breaks
like
my heart that
it's
you feel shame about something that somebody else, a much older person who is, to be honest, like, I don't know if there's a different way to describe it. Like, he's kind of a dangerous person. Like,
yeah.
imagine if you were a student that needed that class, though. Like, you did not
Yes.
need it for pharmacy school. So, like,
Yeah.
you didn't need that credit. But, like, imagine if somebody needed it,
Yeah.
they may have to endure this kind of abuse for an
Yeah.
entire semester just
Or
to pass, and you don't even know if the grading is going to be fair for them.
exactly. Power
And like,
dynamic.
and the thing is, if you feel this shame because
Yes.
somehow you're apparently the person who has to to bear all of that, even though that man should be the one who's so ashamed that he's like a disgusting monster, basically. But you're the one
That,
that's carrying that shame for like years after.
yeah.
But imagine if somebody is in a situation where they have to make money and their boss is being like
Yes.
that,
Yes.
or they have to pass this class, or they will fail and they can't get their degree and they can't get a job. It's like you sharing this story, I know is a personal one and a very traumatic one for you, but I think it shines the light of like how horrible it can
Oh,
be
yeah.
and how difficult it is for somebody to like absorb that kind of
Yeah.
energy or just abuse, you
Yeah.
know?
I am changed
That's
by it
so scary.
forever. Even like
Yeah.
at work, like people that I talk to at work, like a lot of people are like, oh, you're so unapproachable. You never smile. But I'm very careful about my
Yeah.
relationships at work. I'm polite to everyone. I speak to everyone, all the way down to the guy who picks up the trash. But it's kind of like, even when I see people congregating in the break room and it sounds like they're talking about things that aren't related to work, I excuse
Like
myself.
personal stuff.
Yeah, I am very protective.
And
And
that's
I
sad
think
too, because
it
I'm
is
sure there's a component of you that's like, I wish I can open up more, but it's so scary because you
scary
don't know what they're going to exploit you with what, because you've been through that.
through that.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's a
So
big,
I
that's a hard one to
to process,
unpack.
right? I wanted to share practical things that I think I could have used even back then. I think setting boundaries, we say it a lot, And within this context, setting boundaries is very, very, very important. I think I should have gone to the tutoring center if I felt like I
You
needed.
didn't know though.
I know.
You know, and I
But
think
like,
that's why some of these things, it's like we can give tips, but it's the story that is what will like stay with people. It's the,
people.
oh, why are you giving so much attention to me? That's kind of strange. And like, oh, you're giving me all this special treatment. Like that's what I'm saying is like I and that's why like I think if I was in your shoes, I would fall for the same old trap. People fall for the same trap because no matter how many tips or whatever that you get, it's like you're not expecting it all the time.
You're not. And I think that hits the nail on the head. And
You
that's
don't
literally,
know.
that's how we conclude this episode, because what you just said, I'm telling you, what you just said is the godfather of all practical tips with this thing. You think it will never happen to you. You think you will never find yourself in that predicament until you are like you're facing it, because it was happening. I could have picked up on all the clues, but I didn't have the life experiences I have today to know that. I don't know. I think I want this conversation in the presence of another person, or I don't think I'm comfortable having this conversation with you alone, and things like that. Or I don't think that joke was funny. I'm not interested in that.
Yeah.
I'm far more confident today to be able to check people on some of that. But
and it's not cool to also tell people you're too uptight. Like what the first story that I shared with you initially, I'm like, oh, I don't know if I feel comfortable with that. It's like, oh, well, maybe you're just too uptight. I hate you. The people who said those things to me. I'm still holding a grudge. It's still in here. And then here.
We need to do this episode. We need to do a whole sound bite of you and all of your animated voices we got to learn today. Like, no, I hate you.
Yeah, well, I mean, honestly, I think that is how I cope with certain things too, is being really like just weird and silly, because there's no other way to do it. Like either that or I'm just full on pissed and angry, and I'd rather just be the silly, goofy one. But wow. Well, again, I appreciate you sharing this story. I know that it was an emotional one for you, and I don't mean to laugh, but it just reminds me of our intro. Like we really mean it when we say we might cry. Like no joke. We really mean that.
It's not fluff.
I know, but
it's not fluff.
Your story, I think, is going to help a lot of people. Just you telling your story and you being vulnerable with us, I think that is enough for us to see. And I hope that some way you find a way to move past this shame and guilt, because honestly, I hear this story and I can understand why you hang on to that, but I also am like, but it's not your fault, and it's not for you to carry. That burden is not for you to carry. So if there's a way for you to release that somewhere, somehow, I hope that you eventually find it. But well, that concludes our episode today. Oh my gosh, that was a roller coaster. Saley, that was a roller coaster. I didn't know where you were going with this. I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't think that this lady was going to evade Policia for 16 years. What the? Like, I'm like literally like up and down today. I'm dizzy from Policia. All of that. I can't either. Well, thank you so much for listening, you guys. If this episode speaks to you and you learn something from it, or if you feel connected to it and relate to this story, please, I beg you, share with someone that you think will love this story just as much as I did. Send this to them, and this will help us grow so much.
And guys, we appreciated this episode. It will be available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. We don't get to show up and do this without your support, leaving us a review, telling your friends, finding Thu and I individually and on our show pages. The link for all of that is going to be linked below in this episode. And I want to personally thank all of you for receiving me and all of my flaws and all of my imperfections, and making this the place where I am really coming and confronting a lot of things that I have just decided, man, that's just how it is. But thank you for making this a safe space for me to really show up as I am. Thank you.
Yeah.
Until next time. What, y'all? We got this.
We got this.
Bye, everybody.